We will be going live. We have already gone live on YouTube. Bano, if you're there, if you can kindly open your video as well. And I hope you're able to hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Very well. So we are already live on YouTube. With Facebook, we are still trying to check how does it go. Another 2-3 minutes. You have kept your hairstyle very constant as it used to be. I must compliment. It's rare that you see, especially females, keeping their hairstyles constant.
Yeah, yeah. At one point it was much shorter, but I think I always go back to my original hairstyle. So.
I in any case have lost my hair, so
Yeah.
so I switched to go about doing with their hairs. We will request everybody to kindly keep their videos and audios off. We will be opening up videos and audios for everybody towards the end when the question answer session starts. But till that time, everybody is requested to kindly keep their videos and audios off. Otherwise, the cyber head, who is my co-host, would actually take you off the room. Another 2 minutes and Banu, we will go live.
Okay.
In any case, we are already live on YouTube. So the YouTube recording has already started. Facebook, I don't know what there is. I think maybe a bandwidth or a Wi-Fi internet problem or something, because the Facebook is not letting us go live. It is saying that we've done everything which is to be done, but it is not allowing us to go live.
Mm-hmm.
I must say that we are getting very positive responses of all the webinars which we are holding.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because, the fact that we try to start it with positivity and this is there. I have been getting responses, feedback from across the country and even outside. In fact, someone who works for the US government approached us the other day and he appreciated our work as well. So, it is interesting that people from across the globe are connecting and they are finding of benefit. Although the sequence is the same, but, the perceptions, the ideas which every one of you speak is so different from each other that, that adds value to the whole process.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the life sharing which everyone does. So another half a minute, we begin.
Mm-hmm.
Namaskar, this is Professor Aman Agarwal from Indian Institute of Finance. And we bring you again another expert and a person who has fairly lived for a long time and has been a close friend of mine for almost 20 years now on the series of the essence of life and growth. We have been running the series from the mid of April, from 15th of April, every day except for Sundays. And we are happy to say that we have had almost about 28, 29 speakers in the last 20, since 15th of April to speak at this series. Every one of them comes from a diverse background. We have had people from entertainment industry, actresses, models, people from academics like we have today. Then we have had industrialists, people from the industry, different walks of life, different countries. So, each one of them, as I said, we had yesterday a celebrity, Dr. Nidhi Kumar, who has risen from being an anchor, comes from a fairly influential family within the country, but is making her difference in her own way. So each one of them have actually spent about 30, 40, 50 years of their life trying to read through what they have seen going ups and downs in personal life, in work spheres, in economies, and so on and so forth, and have developed their own understanding. So the prime purpose was to, as I said, and I shared with Bano also before, was about talking about the positive aspects of life and growth, and how does really one bring in that positivity and happiness in everyone's life, sharing their own personal life examples. And I'm happy that every one of them has actually gone about sharing their personal experiences from their lives, very strong, intimate moments at times. And I'm happy that they have taken the time and this platform, consider this platform, which is a public platform, to share some of those moments for people to learn from their lives. And I think it's a question of learning, as the Rig Veda quote, which I always quote, says that the knowledge comes from all corners. It's not only from one, but knowledge comes from all corners. You have, which is there, it is Rig Veda 1-81-1, which is one of our own scriptures in India, one of the main. It's not a religious, but a scriptures of knowledge. So, which says, let noble thoughts come to us from every side. And that's where I think it's important. And I have strategically kept two people in specific, I would say one person every week who has less than 20 years of experience, so that we can bring in a little bit of diversity. We don't want an old people talk coming forth and everyone saying that you are from a different era and we are from a different era. So we have strategically kept, and hopefully from next month, I will induce some very young people to bring a different perspective, people who are actually in their university or in their teens, to bring in their perspective of what they think of life and how do they want to see their life. Because looking at the perspective from both sides, someone who has lived life and someone who is yet to live that life, I think is important to give a holistic picture. Before I begin and I start with you, Bano, I would like to give the disclaimer. We are observing all norms and nomenclatures as outlined by Ministry of Home Affairs for conducting Zoom meetings and online webinars and meetings. So we have taken all security protocols. All our participants who are with us are registered Zoom participants, and that enables us that power to actually, if someone does something wrong, to report, and we will get the information, and then we can take an effective measure to condone that kind of an effect to take place ever with the help of the police, the local police. And that is why we have made it restrictive. And as a result, we have had a fall of almost about 75% of our visitors coming on to our platform to attend these webinars. But then we have made it open. We are now going live on YouTube. We are going live on Facebook, so that people can actually see it, those who do not want to register or be part of this framework through this registered protocol system. As a request, all of you are requested to kindly keep your audios and videos off, so that we can conduct the meeting smoothly. I will open the audios and videos at the end when the question and answer sessions for the public at large, and then you're welcome to ask your questions. Till that time, I will have this privilege to ask Bano the questions I have in mind for her on the essence of life and growth. She has an excellent biography and structure which she has brought forth in terms of what she has done, what she's been doing. I will not be able to outlay all of them, and I'm sorry if I pronounce something wrong, Bano. Maybe you can rectify me.
No problem.
Because I understand Turkish names are not so common, as Indian names are difficult for a lot of people overseas. Similar is the case with other countries. When you have names from other countries, they become a little difficult for people to pronounce. But Bano, apart from being my good friend, old friend, and having shared good moments, we caught up at a conference of the European Finance Association almost 18, 20 years back. And since then, we've been connected. We have had her inputs on research, on other aspects. She has reviewed for me for my journal, Finance India, which we bring out, a quarterly journal. And I've been troubling her off and on. And I'm happy that her husband doesn't mind my troubling her, because, men are always men, whether it is India, US, or Germany, or Turkey, as a matter of fact. So, and I would believe that the similar thing is for women as well, but at least I can talk about men. But he has been very kind to allow me to tab on Bano's time now and then, every time when I meet her. And she's always there with a smiling face, as you can see. Bano, Professor Dr. M. Bano Durukhan, who's hailing from Turkey, is joined us. It's around 9:30, I believe, now in Turkey in the morning. And she's joined with us. She's a professor of finance at the Dukos İlyun University, DU University, Izmir, which is the capital of Turkey. And then she's also the acting chair of the Department of Business Administration there. She's member of the Senate, which is the apex body, like we have the executive committees in universities in India. We have senates in large part of Europe and in that zone part of the world. So she's the member of the Senate of Faculty of Business, which actually decides on all the nomenclatures which goes on within that scope of faculty. He's also an affiliate professor of finance, as in India we call adjunct professor of finance of the I can't pronounce the name if I pronounce it wrongly. It's
Ljubljana.
Yes,
Slovenia.
University.
Ljubljana, yeah.
He's also a member of the Izmir Chamber of Certified Accountants and a member of the Association of Chambers of Certified Public Accountants. So you can see that she has finance, she has economics, she has business, she has accounts, and she has a chamber with her simultaneously going forward. And she has been also the director of the Graduate School of Social Sciences. It is not natural, she has an academic bent of mind with research, and this role as a director is more of an administrative task, which is more of time consuming and wasting time, as we say in research and academics, than really making anything productive. But then we must leave these leadership roles. We must take up some of these leadership roles in our lives to understand the nuances. And it's important. I think I have, as the director of the Indian Institute of Finance, had a lot of chances to understand and appreciate the complexities of the administrative systems and how does it work, and appreciate life even better in the academic world after having taken up some of these administrative tasks. And now I go to Bano. I will put you on spotlight, Bano, and then we will move on. So just give me a second before I put you on the spotlight, and then I can request. But before I start with my interview, I would request if you can kindly give some highlights on, the little Bano, which was born, maybe few years back as a baby, and the Bano which I see in front of me, and the one which I met about 20 years back and have been in touch with. So if you can highlight some of those journey of your life, specifically from the perspective of what have you gained and how have your perspectives changed when it comes to essence of life and growth. Bano.
Yeah, thank you, Aman. I would like to thank you and Indian Institute of Finance for giving me this chance. It's really an honor to be here with you, your esteemed guests, and to share my journey of life. It was really a surprise when you asked me to do it, and I was thinking, okay, now what should I talk about? And then I started thinking, and actually I do think a lot about myself, my life. I have my self-reflections to myself, of course, but it's a different thing to talk about it to other people. So going back to the little Banu, actually, I believe that I have had a very lucky childhood. I lived in this 3-story house with my family, and then my uncle, my cousins, and my grandparents in the 3rd floor. So I played on the streets, I was on the trees, I was biking on the streets, playing soccer, volleyball, basketball, all sorts of sports, all sorts of games. So it was, when I look back, I think I had a lucky childhood, and I still feel very lucky in terms of my family, because I've always had their support with me. And I think this is something that makes you more courageous when you take steps. It gives you more strength when you go into new adventures in your life. So and then I also feel lucky that after I went to elementary school, at my time we went to through a central exam where we could go to private schools where we studied for 7 years, and at these schools you would have one prep year where you learned English, and that's where I learned English. And then you studied your junior high and high school years there for 7 years I studied at an American school, which was founded in 1878 in Izmir. So actually, I should also say that I'm from Izmir, from Turkey. This is the third largest city of Turkey. So it has a 4 million population. It's near the Aegean Sea, looking at the Greek islands, Greece, and near the sea, which has a lot of people who has come from Greece when we had the exchange of populations. I don't know if you've had it in your history classes, but in 1924, after the Turkish Republic was founded, after the Ottoman Empire collapsed, we had an exchange of populations where the Turks, the Muslims in Greece were exchanged with the Greeks, the Christians in Turkey, in Anatolia. And my grandmother, actually, my mother's mother, is one of those who came from Kavala, from Greece to Turkey with her family. So Izmir is a metropolitan city where you can find a lot of different cultural heritage. We have the Greek heritage, we have a very strong, also good Jewish community. So I grew up in this open-minded city, and I still live there. I love my city. I feel really lucky to be born here, because you cannot choose where you are born, which family you are born to. And then when I went to this private American school, actually, I think that really opened new venues for me, because that's the first time I met a different culture, or like, let's say, foreigners who are speaking a different language, who really come from a different culture which you don't know. But at that school, I found out that actually only studying is not the way. You should have extracurricular activities. I was on the volleyball team, I was on clubs, I was a scout, and I had a lot of American teachers, British teachers. So I think that those 7 years growing up really shaped my personality and how I perceive the world. And at that school, we also had social clubs where we would visit the orphanages, we would go to the elderly homes, and we had to serve at one of those clubs during our studies. And I was actually at those clubs for almost like 3 years, going to the orphanages and to the elderly houses. And I was very active all my life, as a childhood, as a student. Then in Turkey, we have to go through another central exam to go to the university. And going to the university, I wanted to be an engineer. You will ask me how I found myself as a business and in finance. Actually, my father is a CPA, so he really wanted me to study business, but I wanted engineering. And then at high school, we are separated into groups. So I was in the engineering group studying for the exams that I have to take to go to the engineering schools. But I also wanted to study in English. I wanted to continue studying in English, and in Turkey, that is possible at certain universities. And when I was entering the university entrance exam, my university, which I still work at, had established a department, business department, which had a medium of instruction as English. So my father told me, oh, why don't you write this as one of your choices? Because we had to make choices before we entered the exam. And we enter the exam, we have to go, we have 5 sub-exams that we have to solve. And since I was an engineering student, I would have to solve Turkish, mathematics, sciences, Turkish, mathematics, and sciences, yes. So I had to solve these 3. But if you were going for business, you would have to solve Turkish, mathematics, and social sciences. So not real sciences. But I didn't solve the social sciences exam, but I had enough points to go to the business school. So I went there. I never regretted that. And because I think because of the small classes we had there, it was a new establishment. You know, I also find different ways to express myself. We established a business club there. I was still going back to my high school to help one of the coaches at the who was coaching the volleyball team. So I continued with my sports activities also at the faculty level. I was at the faculty team. So, but all my life, you know, going through these exams, also studying at the university, I always had my role models, of course. You know, we all have our role models. And for me, the main role model was always a teacher came up. My primary teacher, I always say this, my primary teacher made the most impression or the most effect on me, I would say, because she was a lady who really devoted herself to her students. And she was like a mother. And to this day, we lost her, but to this day, you know, we are together with my elementary primary school friends, and she brought us together at her funeral because we would all visit her on Mother's Day, on Teacher's Day, but we wouldn't see each other as, you know, friends from primary school. Maybe we would come across when we visited her. But at her funeral, we came together, and to this day, we are still together. We meet, and what the education, the primary education she gave us, when I look at my friends, I see that that really makes the difference. So that basically opened the way paved us the way for better education opportunities. So after I graduated from university, I went to the US to have an MBA to Boston University. And at Boston University also, I was active, trying to do other extracurricular activities. But that was a big step, because when I went there, it was 1993. The internet wasn't like this. The connections weren't as easy. I would talk to my parents only once a week. And even at the very beginning, it was so hard to communicate with them. You know, sending money for my father was really a problem. And but you know, as you take things as they come, and if you say, okay, you know, I'm a person who is realistic, you know, I have my emotions as well, but I look at things realistically. If something happens, I don't go back and say, oh, why did this happen? Why did this? But I just look at it in this way. Okay, this happened. So now what do I do next? So how do I deal with it now? So because if something has happened, if you cannot change it, you know, it's like the sunk cost. So you have to move on. If you stick to it, if you stick to the past, it doesn't really help you or anyone else. So those first days were really hard for my family and for me, because it was the first time I was away from my family. But I always thought that maybe it was easier for me compared to them. Now, it might sound a little bit strange, because I was struggling to accomplish something. So actually, as a person, I was growing, and I was having more self-confidence. I was proving things to myself. You don't have to prove things to other people. I think you have to prove things to yourself. And at the end of the day, when you look at yourself in the mirror, you have to be happy with yourself, you know. And so it was tough on my family, because you know, I was missing, and usually I'm a positive person with, you know, high energy. And so still, you know, I'm still like a child, and I always wanted to keep the child alive in myself. And so the US experience for 2 years was really helped me grow, and it changed a lot of things for me. It changed my perspective, because coming from Turkey, we were always focused on, okay, Europe, Europe, Europe. And then I went to the US. It was like they were looking at Central Asia, Far East Asia, like, okay, they talked about Europe, but it was not like the real focus. There was a much bigger world than, you know, what I had perceived, at least from here. So it made my point of view different. And I had always realized that talking to people, being with people from different cultures, from different countries, really opens up your mind, opens up your point of view. You start looking at things from a much wider perspective, and it makes you richer, and it makes you understand the world, why people behave in certain ways, because it's very easy to be offensive or defensive, and then, like, you know, just putting the blame on other people. But once you try to understand things, I think it gives you a better peace of mind as well. So all my life, actually, my struggle was with myself. And then after coming back from the US, the original idea was actually, as I said, my father is a CPA. I would work at his CPA firm. But as I said, you know, I always had these teachers I thought made a difference for me. And then when I thought of, okay, why do I exist? What is the meaning of life for me? Why am I here? And I always thought, okay, I should do something that will make a difference. If I can do things that create a difference, it can be for one person, for a community, doesn't matter, but just making a difference, then I will feel good. Then I will have a purpose in life. And so education, I'm a big believer in education. I was always like, before my sister started studying at primary school, I tried teaching her how to read and write. It was a disaster, but you know, of course, sisters, you fight and you have your days. But I also feel lucky that, you know, we are two sisters who can share everything. Like I said, you know, family is very important. So I always thought, you know, education, I have to be in education. And even at the university, when I was studying, we had sometimes business people coming and teaching us. And what I was thinking, and at that time, to be able to teach at the university as an adjunct coming from outside, you would need a PhD. So I came back to work with my father because my father had financed my MBA, but I had tutored students in the US when I was there to at least, you know, earn money to have my living, you know, at least my father paid for my tuition. So I owed that to him. And I came back, I applied for the PhD program. I was accepted. And I started my PhD, and during that time, there was, then they were taking research assistants. And being a graduate of this faculty and having my PhD there, I thought, okay, why not? You know, I at least have some experience as a graduate assistant. And I applied and I was accepted. So my journey started at my alumni, my faculty, as a graduate assistant. Of course, it was a big disappointment and frustration on my father's part because I was out of the picture. Of course, he's always proud on me of my successes, but I know that those days were really tough on him because he was thinking, okay, now what's now? You know, I was so happy she studied business. She's in, you know, she went into finance majors, accounting majors, and now like she's out. But I like being, and so I started as a graduate assistant, and again, I was very lucky with my supervisor, my PhD supervisor. He also helped me grow, and he lived 9 years. He had his PhD from the US. So you could see that, like, as people are exposed to different cultures, different countries, you know, their way of looking at things, doing things change. So yeah, I'm taking this maybe too long. You know, people like talking about themselves maybe. And and I ended up being one of the youngest full professors in Turkey. But along the way, I also always ended up doing a lot of administrative duties besides research and teaching. And I was associate dean of the Faculty of Business when I was 31. And for 4 years, that was really challenging times for me. I was very young, and, you know, I'm still at the very beginnings in a way of my career. So I'm trying to do research, teach, at the same time carry out all these administrative duties. But then, you know, you have the energy and you are idealistic. And I think I always had this attachment to the faculty because I'm also a graduate of that faculty. So I was trying to give my best back. I always saw these administrative duties as a service to my institution, where I work or where I come from. And so it really takes a lot from you, but it also gives you a lot back. You know, hard times, I think, help you learn about yourself, understand your weaknesses, understand your strengths, and it helps you grow in that sense. And then, you know, after my duty as an associate dean ended, and I had become already a full professor during that time, I was thinking I should go somewhere, you know, I should go somewhere. But I wasn't actively looking for a place yet. But when I was associate dean, I was involved. Even before that, I was involved in international relations on my faculty. And even before, we have this Erasmus program with EU. And even before the program, because we had this visionary dean, he had made this agreements with Dutch universities, and we all had some student exchange. It wasn't many, it was like 4 or 5 students coming and 4 or 5 students going out. But even that experience showed me how you can touch the students. You know, I could see our students before they went, and then how they changed when they came back with this experience. So I'm a firm believer of this experience. So being a firm believer, when I was associate dean, we were the pilot faculty because we teach in English for Erasmus program. And during that time, I met a lady from Slovenia, University of Ljubljana, Faculty of Economics. And we were trying to see if we could have a project. And so through this lady, we went into a network as a business school. So I became the representative on my faculty at that network. So I got to meet so many nice people there who are working in the international arena. And then, you know, I found myself in Ljubljana. Ljubljana, of course, the dean was a finance professor, the former minister of finance in Slovenia. He also paved the way up for me because when he became the dean and they were applying for some accreditation, they needed international faculty. So when I went there, I taught some of his courses because he was the dean. He didn't have enough time, so it fit everyone. I went there for 1 year. I stayed for 2 years. I fell in love with the family. So now the country, and I consider Slovenia to be like my second home as well. And I've met lovely people there. I have I can say that I have a big Slovenian family there I'm in contact with. And I have met people from all walks of life. And my experience in Slovenia also showed me another perspective of the world. Now, until I went there, I was looking at things from Turkey's perspective, my US experience, big countries, you know. Okay, Turkey is big compared to many European countries, maybe it's small compared to Asian countries, but it's not a small country. And when I went there, Slovenia having 2 million people, a small country, being in the Balkans, um, and having this Yugoslavian heritage and being a member of EU, you know, you start talking to people, you start seeing how people perceive the world, you know, sometimes how different their perception is than yours. And it really enriched me. And that experience really gave me the chance to actually reassess my views and look at life differently. I realized that I grew, I learned a lot, and the more I learned, the more I understood that I know nothing, as Socrates said. So, you know, it was, and I still continue to go there to teach. Also, the experience with the students, they really have an international body of students. I go to their summer school, and at their summer school, we have an international body of professors who teach, like they have 500 international students on average from like 40 different countries. And we have like 30 professors from, again, so many different countries. So it was really a good experience. And after I came back to Turkey, I became the director of international relations, or international relations officer of the university, because of my international experience. And I really believed in this exchanges. So I served for 4 years as the international relations officer. And my idea with administrative duties is, when you have an administrative duty, maybe you have a chance to make a difference in the system so that you can touch more people, but you don't have the personal interaction. Now, of course, it's frustrating as well at some times, you know, like this business, this administrative stuff. But then I also love teaching, because when you teach, when you are in class, or when you are working with your thesis students, you touch people, and you see it, you experience it. It's a personal thing. No one needs to know that you touch them. Sometimes even you don't realize, you know, you hear it afterwards, you know. I had some experiences when my students came back to me after some time saying, you know, you had told me this, and that made a change for me. I said it without realizing it. I wasn't thinking, okay, I should say this and, you know, make this person go in this way. But, you know, and when I hear this, I say, okay, now what I do has a meaning. What I'm doing something good. If I can make a difference for people, if I can touch the lives of people, and through education, if I can help them open up opportunities for themselves, then, you know, I'm the happiest person. You know, I think it's worth living, and it's worth doing what I'm doing. Yeah, and then of course, among all this, I got married when I was 40, and I'm lucky with my husband as well, because maybe because we also got married late, we respect each other's space, we respect each other's time. You know, I've gone to Slovenia for 4-week periods, and then again 3-week periods. He was in Turkey, I was in Slovenia. Some people said, you know, why do you leave your husband, you know, alone? You know, you go there. But that's a mutual understanding, you know,
True.
and we never had this pressure put on each other. You know, we respect each other's lives, and we believe that when we have our own lives, then our life together becomes richer because we bring in a lot of stuff from outside into our relationship. So that's why when he had to move to Istanbul, he didn't ask me like, do you want to go with me? You know, for us, it was a mutual understanding. We would see how things work and we would find our own way. So he works in Istanbul now for over a year, and I'm still in Izmir at my faculty. But of course, you know, you have to do some changes in your life. I'm not saying sacrifices because I learned this from a professor. Once I was talking to a professor and I said, you know, we all have to make sacrifices in a relationship. And then he said, you shouldn't say sacrifices. If you're saying sacrifices, then it's not good. You know, it shouldn't be perceived as a sacrifice when you go out of your own way to, you know, to create a life for two. So I'm not saying sacrifices, but you adapt your life, let's say, where you are both happy and you can establish your two people life. So here I am, and happy with the coronavirus situation in a way, because my husband is back with me here in Izmir now for over like 2 months, because they're working at home. You know, he's in one room, I'm in one room teaching online. But you know, this keeps our social distancing. But then, you know, we come together. At other times, we have our own projects. We watch movies together. You know, we cook together. You know, we work in the garden together. So we do things together, as well as our own work. And I think this is more or less what I can talk about. So when I look at it this way, it seems like I've been lucky and had a very happy life, but I don't know, that's my perception.
No,
Maybe.
the happiness comes out from your smile and the way you smile in your eyes. So it is there, the kind of openness and the way beautifully you explain the whole thing of your life, and each as a building block. You know, it's like the steps in the stairs, very uniform, structured, whether they were by your own self or enforced by the environment, by your family, or success circumstances. Like, you know, you said 40 I got married. It's not something which could be like that, and that's still making you happy. That's important. You know, the ultimately what we counts is that happiness. And large number of countries, in fact, are working on trying to induce this happiness, trying to develop a happiness index, trying to see that how can we have it as a part of the GDP growth and so on and so forth. So it is important that it is there, and as long as we are able to build in ourselves, you know, and be selfish, as some of the speakers said, and induce that component in ourselves so that we can do it outside, is important. Now, you answered quite a bit of my questions which are there in my mind, but I still have a few which I would like to ask. I open the house to for questions for others who ask questions. You know, so if you can briefly outline from your life history, what are those key elements? I know you mentioned like adjustment, couple of others, but what are those key elements which outline the essence of life and growth?
Yeah, when I look at life, I don't see it as black and white. You know, I don't know if not a lot of people know about this movie, but this Pleasantville. This is a movie, and it starts black and white. Life is so, everything is set. Everyone, the father comes home exactly at the same time every day. You know, everything happens exactly at the same time. But then people start realizing their emotions, the other things. There are other things in life than, you know, what we do. And then the movie starts becoming colored. You know, the people start like people who start experiencing emotions become colorful. You know, in the movie, the others are black and white still. So life is not black and white, and we all have bad days, good days. And I think what we need to do is we should, first of all, take responsibility for ourselves. And then I think we should ask and find a reason to live, because if we don't have our reasons for living, the meaning of life, this may sound philosophical, but it doesn't have to be something like very philosophical. Like I said, I know that what makes me happy is when I make a difference for someone, if I can help someone, if I can show someone a different perspective, and if they are happy with it, I'm happy with it. So that's my way, as Frank Sinatra says. So when I look at, so I think at the end of the day, we are always left with our consciousness. And when I live, I say, okay, what I do, it shouldn't hurt my conscience. If I don't want something to be done to myself, I shouldn't do it to other people. So I think this perception helps a lot. And as I said, if something comes, just take it as it is. If you cannot change it, try to find your way to move forward with it. Because if you can't change it, just sticking to it and trying to, change it, sometimes we cannot. See, the corona came, we are all shut down at our houses, at our apartments, but we can make it a memorable experience, or we can make it a very miserable experience. So it's up to us, actually. So that's how I perceive it. And if you perceive it this way, I think then you find also the strength to fight with the problems that you are faced with. So perseverance is also another thing I think is important. You shouldn't give up easily when you are faced with problems, because, okay, you should accept things as they come, but this doesn't mean that you accept everything. If you can change some things, you should work for it. You shouldn't give up very easily. So as a person, I'm very, you can say, stubborn in a way, or I have perseverance. Like if I put my mind to something, even though I'm very active, but if I say, okay, I have to write this article, I can sit for hours. Okay, in between, maybe I get up and I sit down maybe like 1,000,000 times, but I do it, I concentrate. So perseverance is important. I think, like, not putting yourself down, but being optimistic, and always respect the others. I think this is also another thing. And open communication, open-mindedness, listen to people. Listen, if we can listen to each other, I think that makes a difference. If we can listen to each other, and if we can try to understand each other, empathy, these are very important things. And also, as I said, I think the last thing I would mention is keeping the child inside alive, like be curious as a child, be energetic as a child, be open to everything that you learn, be hungry for knowledge, because the more you learn, you realize that there's even more that, you can do, you can learn. And there's a whole lot that this life has to offer you. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would say.
Yes, true, beautifully put. I saw throughout the journey which you outlaid about your life, the way you grew, that you believed in this concept of investing in yourself. Yes. And while you were investing, I also saw that, and it was reflecting in the way you were expressing, that you were celebrating it. Every moment, every aspect of it, even if it was some kind of a pain which would have been put, or difficulty which you were put into, you were able to enjoy it, you were able to live it, you were able to celebrate it. How do you go about mixing when you say investing in yourself, celebrating life, and to create that real essence for you to move forward?
Like I said, when I do things, and even if I have to do them, I try to get something out of it. And I always believe that if I'm living through something, if something happens to me, there is a reason for it. And it helps me. It can be a bad thing, it can be a good thing. And I know that without the bad days, we cannot celebrate the good days. We wouldn't appreciate it. So sometimes I think like one of my challenges was actually my good luck and my good family, because you know, you have your comfort zone and it's very hard to get out of your comfort zone. But if you don't, then you cannot actually grow, because within your comfort zone, you have everything as you are used to, and then you don't force yourself to change or to develop. And I had a mathematics teacher at high school, and when we started the year, he came and he said, this year your brains will ache because you will learn a lot. That's what he said. And then he said, no pain, no gain. And then I wrote that in front of my math notebook, you know, no pain, no gain. And I liked it because, like, also because being a sports person, I know that, you know, if you stop practicing and then when you start practicing again, you know, your muscles first ache and then they develop, they become stronger. It's the same thing with our personality, with our brain, with our heart, everything, our soul. So, and then he saw that in my notebook, and the next year, before classes started, I was at school. School had not started, but we had our volleyball team practice. And he saw me and he said, Banu, he used to live on campus because he was American and they had their dorm or like their places there. He said, could you come to my place after practice? I have something for you that I brought from the US. I was like, how come? Like, what would he bring me? You know, like he's my math teacher. And then after practice, I went there and I said, okay, how was your summer? He said, yeah, it was a bad summer. We had problems with my parents-in-law, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, but once in a while I went on a stroll. And then at one of the shops, he saw this mirror, a basic, you know, rectangular mirror. And the writing was no pain, no gain. So when he saw that mirror with that writing, he remembered me and he bought it for me and he brought it to me. You know, it's just like it has a magnet behind it, very simple mirror. And then just no pain. And to this day, I still have it. And I'm a firm believer in that. So whatever I live has a reason. And if something doesn't kill me, it makes me stronger. So that's my belief. So that's how I try to go over it. And then that gives you the satisfaction. Then you say, okay, you know, I did it. I managed it one way or another. Maybe not the perfect way, but I did it. So that's maybe that's why.
True. You know, you're as colorful as the life is there in Turkey. You know, I've not had the privilege or the possibility to come to Izmir, but I've been to Istanbul many times, as you know. I was fortunate to visit some of the mosques, the most colorful mosques. As for almost now 25 years, whichever country I visited over 65 countries in the short span. But wherever I visit, I always visit two places, and that is, I visit the religious places, whether it's a church or a mosque or whatever it may be in that country.
Yeah, I do the same.
I visit the seas or the rivers. I take the blessings of the seas and the rivers. That's what my mother taught me, that you must take the blessings of the seas and the rivers, because as the Indian Hindu culture goes, they're all rivers, and every plant and every animal seems to be a form of a god or a person whom you must respect, as you rightly said, give respect and pay respect and so on and so forth. So, you know, but I was amazed. I've been to so many mosques around the world, even in India, but I have never seen such colorful mosques in any country as I see in Turkey. And, you know, that reminded me of the kind of perspectives, the kind of imaginations people have, the way people live life. And, you know, I would like you to highlight a few things about the culture, because, you know, it's not every day that we get a Turkish person, and especially a woman, to come and speak to a larger audience and people from across the globe of how this culture has grown. And, specifically because there is always this concern about women, which is there, and unfortunately a misrepresentation of the way women are treated in some of the developing countries like India or Turkey, as a matter of fact, in some of the other similar countries. So I would like really, if you can give some little perspective to that as well, because that's important when we understand life. I have seen that conservatism in Turkey. I saw that family structures in Turkey as we have in India. But I saw the modern attitude, the zeal to learn, the zeal to capture. There are crooks everywhere. But then I found people with a different perspective. And, as you rightly said, I saw people from Jewish religion. I saw people from Muslim religion. Then I saw people from other countries, and a lot of Europeans also now making it a habitat for themselves to come and settle. And I was amazed that an American professor was teaching you mathematics there, which is interesting, which I could not understand and know that, someone would be there as far back as at that time to try and teach you mathematics. But so if you can give some highlight on that, because that will give a wider perspective to the world at large of what life really is in Turkey. And, the way women are prospering. I have met so many women from Turkey around the globe, and within from Turkey, they're trying to make a difference, quite contrary to what people perceive and think about the life of a woman or a life in Turkey per se.
Yeah, Turkey is a very mixed culture, actually. We always say we are on the road of like a cradle of civilizations. And if you look at Anatolia, it had so many civilizations, and we were so mixed as Turkish people. And when you come to Turkey, you see people from all colors in a way. Like you can see people, women who cover their heads, even the people who cover their heads cover it in many different ways, depending on the area they are from, or they don't cover. The main effect on the Turkish people was, I think, Atatürk. So I have to mention him for sure, because as women in Turkey, I think we are one of the luckiest nations, because as women in Turkey, we got our rights to elect and to be elected much earlier than even many European countries, because Atatürk with his revolutions gave that right to us. And with the modernization movement in Turkey, which started with mainly, it had maybe started with the Ottoman Empire's last days, but if we take it from like Turkish Republic onwards, it started with Atatürk. We had a lot of revolutions. Our alphabet changed, the way we perceive life changed, the education opportunities for women changed. And during our independence war, actually today is the day, it's a national holiday. Today is the day we started our independence war, when Atatürk went to Samsun from Istanbul. And with all this modernization movements, women came to the forefront. And during the independence war, women fought together with their men. And women have always been actually strong in the Turkish culture. Sometimes they say that in Turkey, okay, the man can be the head, but the woman is the neck, so the woman decides where the head turns. So basically, when you look at it, as a woman in Turkey, okay, I'm one of the luckiest, but if you look at big cities, even in smaller cities, women have the chance to study. We had some problems in the eastern part. We have these communities which are working on it. There are social responsibility projects which are helping the women. Of course, this sexual harassment or the abuse of women is a problem in Turkey as well as all around the world. But I think that starts with the women themselves. So what I perceive as a Turkish woman is it's up to us to change certain things. Because when I look at it and when I look at how women are behaving and acting in the community, we have our chances and opportunities, and women in Turkey are clever, and if when they get the opportunities, I have a lot of strong women friends who have good positions in companies as well as serving on social institutions. And at my faculty, for example, you would think an academic life is for men, but we are like 60–70% women at the business faculty. It can be tough sometimes, but you know, it's women are strong in the community in Turkey. Maybe you don't see them in the parliament, maybe you don't see them in certain administrative places, but they do make a difference and they do take the lead. And we also have to realize that the change in the community starts with the women, because as mothers, even if you are not working, even if you are not seen in the community, you are the one who raised the children in the family. You know, because when the father is out working, you know, the children get the initial education from their mother. And that's why whatever your mother gives you, you know, you take and you behave in a certain, so that's like the initial seed that you have. And when I look at it, I don't have a child, but what I tell also my friends is, if you have a son and if you have a daughter, and if you treat them differently, of course, in the community, you know, they will behave differently. If you say, you're a guy, you're a girl, so this is your role, this is your role. If you separate that role from the beginning, then you cannot expect people to think, okay, you know, we are equal, or like, you know, you have these roles engraved in your brain coming from childhood. But if you treat them equally, and if you teach your daughter to cook, you teach your son to cook, telling him you might need to cook one day. You know, you ask for housework, for help from your daughter, you ask it from your son as well. Then people realize that, okay, you know, we may have like job descriptions like in a business, and we may have different roles, but we should be aware that when the time comes, these roles may change. So I think that everything starts with the women. And in Turkey, in big cities, in Izmir, you know, you are free. You wouldn't, once the Slovenian dean, once when I was there, I was at a reception, and he introduced me to another professor, and the professor said, oh, I'm going to Izmir, you know, I'm going to Turkey, when he learned that I'm from Izmir, Turkey. And then the dean said, you will be disappointed. I was like, how come? And then he said, it's like a European city. You know, you won't see anything exotic there. So like, you know, don't expect something exotic, you know, like when you think of Turkey. So, you know, we have our chances, we have our opportunities. Of course, we have the problems, but I think the strong family ties makes women also stronger in Turkey. And what I see is fathers most of the time are behind their daughters, you know, even though it may not seem that way. Sometimes in some families, even if they don't show it, you know, they're always proud when their daughters are successful in life as they perceive it, or they accomplish something. And it's becoming more known that, you know, we are all equal, but in our own ways. You know, we all have our pluses and minuses as genders, or as, you know, different cultures or countries. That's what I would say. That's my perspective. You know, as being a Turkish person, I never felt different from the rest of the world, from other women, actually.
True, true. Beautifully said. You know, women actually make the nations. They not only nurture the nations, they make nations across. And I remember when I was there in the Finland Parliament for the second time, I think 2008 or 9, I spoke at this particular aspect that, women should not forget what if their left hand has started working, they should not forget what their right hand could do. And because Finland had not grown from when I visited first time way back in 2000, I think 1999, it was 5 million people. In 2009, again, it was 5.2 million people. And I said, you need the population. So if you have started working, you are aggressive, you are workaholic, doesn't make a difference, but you need to still produce. And that's important because that's a very important component which has the God has embodied only in the women, and that needs to be taken care of. And I can correlate so well. In fact, my son, I also got married very late, but I have a young son, and my wife during these periods gets everything done from him, whether it is floor sweeping, cleaning, keeping things, even helping in terms of cooking, cutting vegetables. Now these are some things which are there. And when you pointed about that neck and the face, let me tell you, when I have traveled inside US, when I have traveled across the globe, and even in India when I travel, situation is exactly the same. I remember when I was taken in Belgium after a conference in Bruges, and this lady who was taking us a tour guide said, Bruges was controlled by the women. And then she, at the end when it was over, then I asked, who controls now? And she says, we do. So that's the case. These webinars which I'm conducting, fortunately I have a mix of both men and women across. But then my wife will always eyebrow up whenever there's a female who I'm interviewing, and she would like to know who this person is, how do I know her, when do I know her from, how did I connect with her, when did I meet her, why have I not explained to her when did I meet her, and how have I not introduced her to her. It was never the case when the men I'm interviewing is there. But then it's a natural curiosity, and I enjoy it now because I tease her with these aspects whenever she raises these issues. It's become a kind of a fun between me and her, trying to discuss this. It's important. I think that brings that pleasure of life. I think men love to be controlled, and I think that's a magic. Wherever they don't like being controlled, there are frictions. But I think men also love being controlled by women whom they care for, women whom they love, whether it is a daughter or a granddaughter or their wife or their mothers. Each one of them, I think, plays a very critical and crucial role in men's life. And I can correlate that when I see my niece, my mother, my sister, my wife, and I don't mind being controlled by all of them. I love it. So I always say I have so many women in my life, which actually run my life than me myself. I have two more questions before I close for today, and then I put it for people to ask. I know it's already overstepped your time, but still, I thought I should ask these two questions from you because you have given beautiful messages, and I would not like to get inside most of the things. But you are a mathematician. You have studied finance. You studied the nuances of finance. You may not have your own children, but then as teachers, I feel all these who pass out, all these who grow, they are our children. They may not be born from our body, from our blood, from our DNA, but they are our children because we make them grow. We love their growth and we cherish that growth. That brings so much of peace and happiness to our lives than anyone else could do, actually, as a matter of fact. So we live in these with these uncertain times, but with these certainties in life as well. How do you see the next 6 months to an year shaping up? You have cherished these 2 months. You know for sure the fact that we are now going to live with Corona. So how do you cherish and how do you bring out those 6 months to a year now?
What I see is, I think this Corona really will have an impact on the way we think of life, the way our lifestyles. I think this gave us a way to reflect on ourselves, and these Corona days, I think, will have effects on the two fronts, on the personal front for everyone. Even if they are frustrated at home, if they are bored, I think these people will start thinking, okay, what was I doing? Like when I was shut down at home, I was bored. Why was I bored? So then, like, what kind of a life was I living? Because what I believe is, for me, I was happy, like this lady yesterday said, because I have so much to do at home, and I was thinking, I'm healthy, I'm in the comfort of my home, and I have so much to do. And so I think people will have the chance to reflect on themselves, on their own lives. And if they can do this, I think they can improve and they can change what they are doing. If they're not happy with something, okay, it's not always that easy, then it's said, but so how we perceive life, like, you know, we were shopping, these shopping malls, for example. I always could never understand, you know, why people feel this need to go to these shopping malls, and like we have this shopping mall tourism in a way, like so many shopping malls, people just going around, walking around. Now all these people shut down at home, they're probably bored because they don't, you know, they cannot go out. But then I see that there were so many free concerts, ballets, virtual museums, libraries opened up their archives. So actually there was a whole lot other world that we could take advantage of. And if we did these during these days, I think we will have a different perception of life and how we do things, how we perceive things once we go back to this new normal, because it will not be the same again. And our work styles will change. And I read this one questionnaire, where there was one survey done, one international company, and they found out that 89% of the companies said that they would have this home office working as part of their working. So people now will change. You know, we will not have these big plazas, business plazas, where people are stuck there, like all these skyscrapers, like, I don't know, 20, 30 floors in these, like without any windows. And the housing market is moving, because like now people want to move from apartments to houses. The houses became again the new fashion. So our lifestyles will change, our work styles will change, how we perceive things will change. But I think what will become even more important is how we communicate. Because once we are behind the screen, we already talk a lot about communication skills, how communication is important. You know, some of the problems come out because of miscommunication. Many problems are due to miscommunication. But now, okay, we went online, but I already knew my students. We were face to face before we went online. What will happen when I have students who I don't know, who I haven't had any physical togetherness in one classroom, and the students don't know each other? Then, you know, the way we teach on my part will change. But I also find this really exciting, because I'm like, okay, now I'm learning something new. You know, I'm forced to teaching online. It was much harder. It's taking quite a lot of time, but you know, you find your way and you say, okay, I do this, I do that. I even had guest speakers, you know, because I would have a guest speaker in my class if we had it face to face, but she's in Istanbul. And then I was thinking, okay, how will I fly her in and all this? And then I had her even for 2 weeks because we were online. So she could just, you know, connect, and she could be our guest for 2 weeks. So you can find the positives, you know, you should get the pluses and integrate it into your life and change it so that, you know, you become fuller and you realize that you're enriched actually. So I think about communication will be important, because how we communicate, how we transfer our energy, how we transfer what we are thinking will become even more important, because it's much harder like this. Also, like when students or here, everyone has their cameras shut down. Also students, they shut down their cameras. So you're like talking to a wall. It's not the same. In class, you see their eyes, you can see from their mimics if they understood, if they didn't. But with cameras shut, you know, it's much harder. So we will have to find new ways, but that's also exciting, you know.
True. You know, Turkey, you mentioned about soul consciousness in your discussions a couple of times. The fact that you're able to do. And you also reflected on things which talk about, we say in India, more like meditation and so on and so forth. Now, my last question, and I'll request everybody to kindly raise their hand so that I can bring them in for the questions you have for Bano. Uh, what would be your advice, given the fact that I have known Turkey has a very spiritual way of looking at it, and we feel, and it's come out commonly by most of the speakers, not all, but most of the speakers, that spirituality is not to do with religion per se, but it's spirituality which does make things grow within oneself, relearn oneself. And given that we are perplexed with this problem of plenty, the youth is perplexed with this problem of plenty for everything, whether in this internet world is bringing even more in terms of that plenty problem. How do you think that the youth and the students should actually bridge that gap of this problem of plenty and the life, the growth, the misinformation which you might rightly mention, with the concept of spirituality actually taking us forward? Because that is something which has taken us so far in the last 10,000, 15,000 or 50,000 years, this world has existed for humans.
Yeah, I think we are sometimes so lost in this life that we have to run all the time. I think this Corona days also helped us stop a little bit. And I like this story when there were I forgot exactly where it was, but there were the local people and then the people from outside as tourists, and they're climbing or trekking, and then the local people are carrying the luggages, and then the local people stop at one point, and the tourists, they're like, why did you stop, let's move on. And the local people say, we have to wait for our souls, we are going too fast. Now I think this is what we have been doing, in this life. We have so much, as you said, with all this technological developments, also with all the information, especially for the young people now, things are so easy. And when I said I had a very lucky childhood, sometimes I really pity the new generation, because some of them are like apartment children, and so they think jumping and playing something is very easy because they play it on their computers or on the mobiles, on the tablets, but they don't know how it feels to try to climb a tree. You fall down so many times, and at the end, you end up climbing, and then you feel the accomplishment. Now, the young generation, I think some of them miss this notion of accomplishment, because everything is very easily provided to them. So that's something that we should be aware as parents or as older people. They should be aware that, life is not very easy, actually. We have to fight for things that we want to get. And then they become also precious. If we get things very easily, they're not valuable for us. I have a niece, and the point I stopped buying her gifts was when I realized that whenever I went to Istanbul to visit my sisters, they live there, and her family, we would bring, I was like Santa Claus, I would bring so many gifts, and she would be, hey, auntie is here, I have so many gifts. And then she would just unwrap them. Okay, thank you. And then 5 minutes later, the gift is forgotten. And then I was thinking, she doesn't know how to appreciate, because all the time she has so much. So I said, okay, I'm not buying her any gifts anymore, only, okay, on her birthday, on certain days, yes, and not exaggerate, because I realized that we weren't doing a good thing, but we were actually doing harm to her, because she always got everything she wanted. So she never had to struggle or fight for anything at that point. So I think this is important. Whatever we fight for is more valuable for us. If things come easy, then it doesn't have any value. Coming back to our soul, the spirituality, in Turkey, yes, we are mainly Muslim community, but we are at the same time secular. So we also have quite a lot of different, also we have sects. As I said, in Izmir, also in Turkey, we have the Jewish community, we have different communities. And also in our heritage, you know, we bring in a lot of different things, beliefs from other spiritual movements. So, and now lately also a lot of, some of my friends are becoming yoga instructors, visiting India, and, you know, or other types of spiritual things. It's not like, what I realized was when I went to Slovenia, yoga, India, spirituality, that was really on the top. You know, that's actually when I was like, yes, I should also visit India. You know, I didn't have the chance, you know, my struggles to getting the Indian visa, and then it didn't happen, but for different reasons. So what I saw was people needed to go to these things. Now in Turkey, I think spirituality and or like this support, this social support we find from each other, from our neighbors, from our family, that doesn't, that helps us. So we don't need to look for things outside, because if I'm frustrated, I can share it with my friends, I can share it with my family. You know, sometimes we say, oh, you talk like a psychologist, you know, like, so, so we all give each other some, like we tell, so you can share your feelings, you can share things with your social environment. Then you don't need to look for outside things, I suppose. And we accept everything, you know, all spiritual things, or whenever we hear about something that that attracts our soul, I think we are open to that. So we just take it, we personalize it, we internalize it, and then it makes you a better person.
True. No, I agree. And hope for that soon we have you in India also, like you went to Slovenia.
I hope so too, yeah. I hope so too.
But to make India your other home as well, the third home maybe. You know?
I hope so. Inshallah.
And now I open the house. I bring forth first Professor Ashok Laha, who is CEO for Intera IT. He's an American, and we have the pleasure of having him in India because he keeps hopping like a frog between US and India, more in US and less in India. But then I have this pleasure of having him with me, and I have tied a knot with him. Like you are an adjunct professor, you're affiliate professor. I have an adjunct professor at the Indian Institute of Finance. So, you know, he is part of my faculty. He is part of my group, my family. And, you know, so as a result, I always have leeway of certain luxuries and pleasures with him, although he's a busy industrialist, and, you know, industrialists and businessmen, they do everything only for money. But here I find a lot of humane, a person who wants to contribute to society. So I thought, you know, he should be there. Ashok, please go ahead.
Thanks, Aman. It's a wonderful introduction. You know, you are doing a wonderful job. You know, I enjoyed quite a lot. Dr. Banu, thank you very much. You know, this is the first time I'm meeting a Turkey professional. I was in US grad school. I got a chance to meet lots of people from Turkey as a grad students. But this is the first time I'm meeting you. You know, what impressed me about you is that you are a normal human being, genuine human being. Honestly, I do that, okay? Before I ask the question, you know, there's some commonality. I try to listen to you very carefully. Some commonality there. You are in a US, in a Boston University, beautiful university near Charles River, from 93 to 95. I was in a Boston from 87 to 96.
Wow.
As in a Boston.
So we were there at the same time.
Yeah, we were there, yeah. I wish I would have got a chance to meet you at the time. I was working there for 6 years, 7 years. Then after that, I moved to California, and then I started a company. Okay, and after that also, my daughter went to the Boston University in year 2000, after year 2004, something like that, when we went to undergraduate and graduate school in Boston University. So I used to have a chance to, that time I used to visit her quite a lot, almost once a month to see her, you know.
It's a beautiful city. I love Boston.
It's a beautiful city, and Boston University is a beautiful place.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful place. That's one of the best universities, beautiful downtown, as compared to other places. It's a beautiful place. And on the other side, Charles River, other side, MIT and Harvard.
Yeah.
Okay. My question is that, couple of questions. You spent 2 years in Boston, and you went to, before the American school, undergraduate, right? And my daughter also went to American school in India at the time frame. So I got a pretty good idea, some idea about how the American school looked like. And of course, my daughter is a US student. Now, from your point of view, how do you said that you spent the time in Boston has changed you quite a lot. How that's relate to? How do you change yourself? Think that 2 years in Boston University has changed you what you are today. And what's the difference between that one and what are things you learn, it helped you to be what you are today?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's nice that we have all these connections. Yeah, Boston, these 2 years in Boston were really important stepping stones for me because it was the first time I lived away from my family in a country. I didn't know the system. Okay, I went to an American junior high and high school. I had known American people. I had American teachers, so the culture was not maybe that foreign to me, but still, you know, going to the US at that time, not having anyone you know, and you are all alone in a system, and you have to find housing for yourself, you have to know how to manage your money, and the system is a little bit different than what you are used to. And then I met all these people from different countries as well. You know, the US is also full of a lot of international students, especially at the graduate level. So it helped me test myself, because until then I was a successful student. I had all the comfort of my house, my parents. Okay, you know, they didn't give me everything, but I never had stood on my 2 feet before. So I lived with 2 housemates. We, of course, had our struggles. I had to make new friends. It was the first time I was out of my city, my country, because some of my friends went to Istanbul to study at the university, but I studied university again in Izmir. So I had my car, you know, after I got my driver's license, I was going to the faculty by car. So I had all the comforts I needed. So I had my comfort zone. So the only thing that was expected of me was to be a good student and to live a full life with extracurricular activities and everything. But going to Boston, I had to manage, I had to wash, I had to cook, I wanted to carry out all these other activities. So I did have some adaptation period. But then I realized that actually I can make friends. The way I approach people, the way I communicate with people enables me to find my way around. Like I had people who would support. And when I faced problems with housemates, I realized that I could find the balance. And I realized that actually I can manage my money, because I also have this, you know, story that we laughed quite a lot when we were small kids, when my sister and I, we got our allowances, I would spend everything. And then I would go to her and I'd say, should we, put our allowances together so we spend together? And then she would say yes, so I would spend hers as well. And then she would be mad, and then she would say, no, you have your own allowance, I have my own allowance. So, I realized that actually as a person, I can live as a person. And once I started tutoring the athletes also, when I was allowed to do that, I realized that actually it didn't matter whether people were from different countries with different cultures, because I had different athletes with different backgrounds. And I had the chance to test myself with a lot of things. That's how I thought I grew, basically. I realized that if I get out of my comfort zone, I can do it. I had more self-confidence in that sense.
Thank you. One thing, when I went to grad school in the US, I was living in an apartment. The first thing struck me is that I have to clean my own bathroom, bathtub, and cook food. And that's a complete eye-opener, because I was social, so I have to clean my apartment, other people not come to a house, so I do that. The last question, because there are a lot of other people there, so another question there. I think Aman talked about the women's place in society and how to do that, right? Now, in India, we got a woman prime minister, Indira Gandhi, some time ago. Some of the European countries, some of those Australia, some other countries there. US, although women are fairly liberal, they're almost there. US, we have last 200 years, they didn't have a woman president. And I don't know whether they'll ever have a woman president for the next 20 years. How about Turkey? Do you think that you'll see a woman prime minister, like you for matter, or somebody else like you will be the prime minister in a Turkey?
Actually, we did have a woman prime minister in the 90s. When I was in the US, we had Tansu Çiller, a woman prime minister.
Okay.
Yeah, we already had one. We didn't have a woman president, but we also changed our system. We went from parliamentary to presidential democracy 2-3 years ago. So we did have, so in Turkey, actually, women, we also have like women as the head of political parties in Turkey. So we do have women and we have women who are the head of the city councils of the parties, political parties. So we do have women in politics. And they are, because we also still have women ministers, but we only had once a woman prime minister, but not a president yet. But we'll see what happens.
Okay.
So we can certainly see you in the cabinet of ministers, or as a prime minister or a president soon.
I don't know. I'm not sure of politics, so
my last question is that when you come to India next time, I love to meet you.
Thank you. I would love to do that too.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When
I'm done.
If you're not in town, then you'll have to fly from California to here to meet her.
Sure, definitely. Definitely, I'll do that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I'll go to Professor Madan Mohan Goel, who has been a former Vice Chancellor of University and has been a professor and head of the department of one of the very prestigious and prominent university called Kurukshetra University, where one of the epics of Mahabharata has happened and is an evidence for India. So, he comes from the land of spirituality, and I have been following his writings for quite some time, especially after he left his position as head of the department and became a vice chancellor and all, which are very spiritual, very motivating from time to time. I request Mr. Madan Mohan Goel to ask his question or comment whatever.
Thank you, Professor Aman, for giving me this wonderful opportunity to listen to this beautiful women from Turkey, Miss Banu, Professor of Finance. And I'm happy to learn that basically she has given us a conception of investment in self with celebration, and has beautifully confessed that women in Turkey are clever. Hopefully it was a great compliment, not a sarcastic comment. uh, I'm interested basically to share with her that the conceptualization of spirituality is practically coming from our Kurukshetra, the land of Bhagavad Gita. I promote Kurukshetra as a place to be the first ever university on the planet, because the objective of a university is to get knowledge. And the best possible knowledge has been given by Lord Krishna himself in the form of Bhagavad Gita. Let me tell you, Bhagavad Gita is a ism neutral, secular, religion-free treatise on management, relationship management, and welfare economics. And since you have been talking about mathematics also, the concept of summation, which gives a concept of spiritual mathematics, 1 plus 1 is equal to 1, all in one, one in all, is a conceptualization of spiritual mathematics, which has been given to us by Lord Krishna. That is I wanted to share with you. A very interesting thing I wanted to talk to you as a professor of finance. You know, every country like India are these days are struggling to fight coronavirus, and we have come out with a economic package talking of basically both monetary policy and fiscal policy. You know, we have tried to sum up some fiscal benefits and monetary benefits. I'm worried as a student of economics that when you go in for providing loans to the people, particularly the small people, the farmers, it leads to basically debt trap. And I have been calling it as a cobra effect. You know, sometimes these mayors leads to the farmers to commit suicide. So sometimes the mayors become unpleasant. So I wanted to have your take on your perception, basically how to settle this issue of basically giving loans, and which may not bring them in debt trap and prove to be a cobra effect on the Indian economy when we implement this package in our economy.
Very, very good question, but I think that would require quite a lot of time. But briefly, yeah, I agree with you. You know, like many governments, of course, they cannot just give out money. They don't have enough finances for that. They are either giving out loans, or they're extending the maturities of the loans for the businesses so that they can survive. And as you have said, now the problem is from the businesses side and from the agricultural area also in Turkey. You know, we are discussing now what's going to happen when the time comes to pay off these loans, and if there can be any subsidies and other ways of helping the people. And that's what I actually tried to say. The way we do work, the way we govern also will probably have to change. And we realize that now, like, all these luxury cars are sitting out on the streets, but people are running for food. So agriculture is important. So instead of building houses and building factories in these areas where we could plant, you know, we should be doing something else. You know, we shouldn't be ruining all these plantation areas. And so what I believe is, for those, especially for agricultural areas, we have to bring those farmers together, like using maybe cooperatives to work, and then, like, you know, they come together. It started a little bit in Turkey, and people started buying from these cooperatives, you know, their products, and then that helps the farmers as well. So you don't have this intermediaries, the farmers come together, and then they can sell their products to the people. But I agree with you, the loans, you know, that's one thing that I'm also worried about, how it will affect also the small businesses. You know, they're getting these loans, but what will happen if the economy, we are talking about this V shape or U shape, and it seems like it won't be a V shape, it will be a U shape. So what will happen? That's why the way we do business and the way the fiscal and monetary policies we use will have to change. We have to find other ways of doing things.
Thank you very much, Professor. I wanted to share another concern. Being a devotee of Krishna and talking of Bhagavad Gita, I have conceptualized a new kind of economics, which I call needonomics. Economics of need, confining to needs and no to greed. Basically, the entire world of economists talking of greed only when we think in terms of either V-shaped recovery or U-shaped recovery. So ultimately, if you share my concern that we can have this needonomics as a development strategy for an economy, and it can be based on spiritually guided materialism, practically confining to needs, which is flowing from Bhagavad Gita. There is one shloka in Bhagavad Gita, shloka number 22 of chapter 9, which says that Lord Krishna says to Arjuna in Kurukshetra that if you believe me completely, wholeheartedly, whatever you need, that I'll give you. And whatever you have, that I'll take care of. And let me tell you, Life Insurance Corporation of India is using it as logo, meaning thereby it can give an insurance to the lifestyle of the people in post-COVID era. Therefore, we have to understand, analyze, interpret, and adopt this conceptualization of needonomics as well as this spiritually guided materialism, because I believe in the rate of progress in spirituality is faster than the rate of progress in materialism. And that can basically come to the rescue of not only Indian economy, but the global economies around the world, that we come out of this crisis of COVID. And I'm really glad to hear you, Professor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I will go to Mr. Meenu Bhagwat. Mr. Meenu Bhagwat, just a second, I think he was here. I think he had to go for another meeting. He's left. But he was a man who has actually, who lives that young child in him. He's 80 plus, but he runs like a young child and does activities. I see there were two more people, Dr. Ms. Jyoti Dutt. I'll go to her first, and then I'll go to Dr. Madhu Bala for her question. Dr. Ms. Jyoti Dutt, if you are still there, I will unmute you and maybe you can ask a question. Ms. Jyoti Dutt. Ms. Jyoti Dutt, if you're still there. If she comes in, we'll do. Otherwise, let me go to Dr. Madhu Bala. So go ahead. Dr. Madhu Bala. Yes, please go ahead.
Good morning. Professor Banu, it was a very informative session. And
Dr. Madhu Bala, please.
Okay, I can speak. Sorry. Good afternoon, everybody. And Professor Banu, it was very informative session. I went all through. At the younger age, you learn there is no gain, there is no pain. And I agree with you that one cannot get through life without any pain. But still sometime, means every person confused. How do we know that pain is healthy for us or not? Or should we go with this pain or that pain? So still, that's the mic. Even for the younger people as well, younger generation, they confuse that I opt for this field and I opt other field. So there's a little bit confusion. So I just want to know, Miss, how we know that the pain is healthy or is a useless pain?
Yeah, I think, yeah, sometimes we do go through this unnecessary pain, or sometimes there have been times when I thought, why is this happening to me? Like, do I have to go through this? And then I always found that, okay, some of them were unnecessary, but to live through, in life, we cannot sometimes choose the pain that we have to go through, it just happens. And what I always think is, at those times, okay, why do I have to go through this? That's why I said, if we have a goal, a meaning, then I think we can endure all this pain. And then we don't actually think about, is this necessary, unnecessary? I never thought about that. I only thought, okay, why do I go through this? I never thought, should I go through this or not? I never thought it was a choice, at least the way I lived it. If I had problems, challenges, I said, okay, this had to happen. And it happened to me now. I'm left with this problem, with this challenge. So I have to manage it now. I'd never questioned whether this is something necessary I have to go through, and what I would say is I'm against like creating, pain or frustration. There are some people in life who get energy from frustration. I've also met this kind of people. And I always found that unnecessary. Like they created this misery for themselves, and they got their nutrition from this misery. And I was never that kind of a person. So when I saw those people, I always questioned, why do they do this? But that's their personality. Sometimes also, actually, we have to think of our personality as well. There are things that we cannot change with our own selves. And that's why I said, if we can self-reflect, if we know ourselves, and I always tell my assistants, I say, from being business, do a SWOT analysis for yourself. We are not perfect, look at your strengths, you look at your weaknesses, and then you look at outside, what opportunities lie in front of you, what are the threats for you, and then try to manage your life based on your goal, like a business. Actually, we are, as people, we can perceive ourselves like businesses, we are all in ourselves enterprises, and we live something, and then that's like a sample of life. So my life, I have my empirical findings from my sample of life, actually. So that's how I find my implications. You have your own sample and you have your own empirical findings.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Madhu. We will just, I think the other lady has left. Thank you, Bano, for taking this time out. I would be closing this session in just another minute. I need to announce what we have in hand for today and tomorrow, and then I will close. Thank you for this interesting and insightful session we had today, and the kind of debate, the interest which is generated. There were so many hands up before, but as we have announced it for only about half an hour, 45 minutes, we ran it to double the time that was there. And everyone stood back all the through. I saw many people go out for maybe Wi-Fi reasons and all, but then they came back in. And it is that interest. And I will trouble you more, so you should let your husband know that this man is not leaving me around.
No problem.
I would trouble you because we intend to open up something on another webinar series on the jobs and the career perspective. And I like this particular perspective of yours about the international sphere, the way you learned and the way you felt and what you did for the university. It's very critical that people understand some of these very small, basic nuances when they want to grow out. And even the other day, this person was there who said that, actually I moved out of my conveniences to actually go about learning. The student of mine who I interviewed, Shalini, and she says that when I moved from India to the US, here I had these luxuries, the pampering of my family and others. And then I moved out into the space. And in fact, even Ashoka asked the same thing at that time, that, so it has to be at times you have to be put into constrained positions to learn, like the constrained positions we enjoy today. So it's a question of enjoying that life and that constrained position. We have tomorrow, we have Dr. Sandeep Marwa, who is again a media personality, a person who has churned the lives of a large number of media personnel, journalists. His students have been anchors, senior anchors and editors in various newspapers, TV channels and others. He has actually pioneered the journalism education in India as a formal education framework, and he created the firm and he created the film city in Noida as well. We don't have a film city, we had only Bollywood and then some places Tollywood, South India and other places, but he created one in Noida as well, which is north of India, and that's closer to next to Delhi. And then we have a virtual training program on finance for non-finance executives going on to the weekend. So I thought I should announce this. And then we are going to hold a special seminar with some chairmen of companies and banks next week beginning or so on the issue of life with Corona, how the business economy and the situations will move up in the country. So with that, I'd like to thank Namaskar, Jai Hind, and Vande Mataram.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Stay healthy,
My pleasure.
stay home.
Thank you. See you.